reality begins within. That's the flow of things. But some people focus on that outer identity, yeah, and then you end up with racism, and you end up with this thought process of, hey, what I think is good, and if you don't agree, and well, that you're bad, and I'll prove to you you're wrong and stupid, and if you still don't believe me, then I'm gonna destroy you. That's a duality. Yeah, that's where good versus evil comes from. That's man-made. Lakota Star Knowledge teaches that there's at least 3 perspectives to everything. Some of these people will look at something and they'll look for a perspective that they like and reject the rest, which means if there's at least 3, that means they only at the maximum perceive 1/3 of the reality of that situation. At the most. That's only 33%. Look at how much of reality they're rejecting. Yeah? That's duality. They categorize the other perspectives as bad. They put them together and call it bad. And the one they like, they call it good. That's a duality, separating things into 2 groups. Another one concerns emotions. They only want to stay in one emotion, regardless of which one it is. It doesn't matter which one it is. But they do their best to stay in just one emotion. And they'll do anything to stay in that emotion. And that's where addiction comes from. And then they'll use substances to reinforce that. Yeah? The addictions always begin within. There's always something that within causes that to happen. That's another duality. So, when people say, just think positive thoughts, just think happy thoughts, well, you can start like that, but if you try and stay like that, that's where you're going to go and get into addiction. Yeah, you can do that to stop whatever situation you're in, to turn your inner car around, but eventually you have to look at everything. But the addicted people only try to do that one thing, whatever it is. And they'll do anything to stay in that, whatever it is. Whether it's an emotion or a thought, or they'll do whatever they can to stay in that. And what's happening here is that when a difficulty comes to them, they say, "Oh, that's negative, so I'm going to think of something else," and they totally missed an opportunity to increase their well-being. Yeah, so that their emotional development is not much. It doesn't amount to much. So they trap themselves in one emotion. When you do that, you cannot develop emotionally, and then you cannot develop spiritually either. In Lakota Star Knowledge, when you learn from a difficulty, the emotions leave and bring you peace. And you develop emotionally, and then you can develop spiritually. In America, Columbus Day, this was signed into law. I mean, not law, signed into a holiday by President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, because he was kind of influenced by this Catholic church group called the Knights of Columbus. They supposedly do, they're like rich businessmen, Italian businessmen, and then they do things for poor people so that they can get a lot of these, tax write-offs and stuff like that. So they don't have to pay so much taxes. This is the reason why they do it. It's all because of money. Yeah, they're big businessmen. They kind of pressured President Roosevelt back in 1930s, around that time, to have a Columbus Day. Yeah, they wanted a Catholic hero because you have other heroes, and the Knights of Columbus. They're a powerful group. Yeah, they can influence politics in New York City, And so they really pushed for this. They pressured Franklin, President Roosevelt. He's one of the faces on Mount Rushmore, yeah, in South Dakota. Um, and so he signed it into a holiday, yeah, a federal holiday. And in the beginning, it was October 12th. That was always known as Columbus Day. And then in 1973, I think it was, they changed it to the second Monday of October. Yeah, and so these Catholics, they want him to be recognized because he discovered the New World. And how can you discover a world when there's millions of people already living there? There's a really famous comedian, a Native American comedian by the name of Charlie Hill. He's an Oneida Indian. I guess he's part Mohawk and Cree too. Okay. This guy's 10 years older than me. How about that? Okay. He's a really young guy. Anyway, YouTube him. You're going to find some funny stuff, yeah? He's a friend of Richard Pryor. When Richard Pryor had a TV show, he had Charlie Hill on there, yeah? It was pretty cool, I thought. This guy's really funny. I highly advise checking him out. Yeah, he's smart. His humor is smart, and it's really funny too. And so a smart, funny Indian. That's really funny, yeah. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, he has a really good joke about this, and it's like, what Columbus did. That would be like he said, that would be like going to a white person's house and setting up a camp in the backyard, yeah, and then so the white people come out and say, "Hey, what are you doing here?" And then they say, "No, I discovered this land, so this is my home now." See, that's what Columbus did. Yeah, how can you discover a land that where people are already there? It just doesn't make sense. Yeah, it's stupid. So he didn't discover anything. Columbus, what he did was atrocious. It's horrendous what he did. Let me list a few things. Okay, there's a lot of things that he did when he came to. See, he didn't land on America. He didn't even come close to America. He landed on a island that's today I think is known as Haiti and the Dominican Republic. That's basically where he landed. And when he came here, I should say, because he didn't come to America. I'm not in America. I'm in Germany. I have to remember that. The guy is a businessman, and he's a schemer and a half. The way he obtained his funding was very underhanded. The American history books say that. See, he's Italian, yeah. And American history books say that Italy wasn't really a powerful country, but Spain at that time, they really had a big realm, yeah, the big world. And so he went to what's her name, Queen Isabella, I guess that's how they say it. And there's two L's, so would they say that Isabella? Wonder. I'll have to ask Marta about that. She's a Spanish lady. They went there, seeking. I mean, he went there, because Spain has a lot of money. Okay, at that time. Now, originally, what he did was he how does this go again? He obtained it. My res English here. He obtained his funding. So he originally wanted to reach Asia. Yeah, he was heading for Asia, And he did this by seizing properties from Spanish Jews and Muslims um, by the order of King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella. Yeah, so they didn't really give him money. What he did is he seized property from Jews and Muslims that were living in Spain at the time. He just took their property and sold it, and then he headed out. Yeah, headed out to, and ended up in the wrong place. Yeah, he got lost and ended up in the wrong place. On his way to wherever he thought he was going, he offered a year's salary to the first person who could see land. And when a sailor saw land finally, he said, "Well, you know, I already saw that a few days ago. I just didn't want to say anything." See, already he's scheming against his own crew. Yeah, he's really frugal here. Yeah, very thrifty. You know what I mean? And this, I don't mean that in a good way. Say, give the first money to, I'll give this amount of money to somebody who spots land first, and then when somebody finally does spot land, then he says, no, I already saw that I saw light in that direction 3 days ago. He said, see, ripped off his own crew, yeah, and so even with his own people, he's going against them. He's pulling just tricking everybody. When he arrived and saw the Indians, they were people, I guess, think they're Arawaks, Taínos, and Lucayans, all friendly, according to Columbus's writings. Soon after they arrived, he wrecked one of his ships. Yeah, this is the one called Santa Maria, and these Arawak Indians worked for hours to save the crew and the cargo as sunk. So these Indians are helping them; they're saving them. Yeah, and so he took advantage of their friendliness, of their willingness to help. So he knew they were not going to put up a fight if they try to do something. So he realized that they can, they're so friendly, they could make good servants. So he's had a plan to enslave them, make them slaves. So in the one of his trips back, he took, I forgot how many he took. 150 or 50. Let me do that research real quick. But he took some Indians back to Spain for slaves, and they all died. Yeah, on the way back to Spain. He wrote about experiences that he allegedly saw, and a lot of people think this is all nonsense. Like he said, he saw two Indians fighting, and they were killed, and I don't know who killed them, if it was the Spanish people or whatever. And he says that they came from a different island. And he said that they eat men. He said they're cannibals, and they had faces like dogs. Yeah, they had dog-like noses. He said. So he's trying to justify his actions by presenting these Indians in his writings as freaks. Yeah, as and this is taught in schools in America. Yeah. And this is all false. There were no cannibals down there. There never were. For his first trip, he left 39 men, on this island. And these Spaniards really, they just went and just were raping women left and right. And when Columbus returned, they were all dead. Yeah, the 39 men were all killed. But he came back with 1,200 more soldiers, and he told them, just go take what you want. So they went among the villages and killing people left and right, smashing babies against rocks, beheading people, and raping women, then cutting them up, and they took a lot of women as sex slaves, and Columbus would sell them to he have his men, his own personal men would go out and capture all these Indian women, and then he would sell them to his sailors, and they were putting in orders. Yeah, a lot of these sailors were putting in orders, and they were ordering for little girls. I mean, 9-year-old girls. So Columbus's men would go out looking for Indian girls, and little girls, and they would take them and from their mothers, and then they would sell them to these sailors, and can you this is what Columbus Day is about. This is the truth. This is not bullshit. And the reason how it's the truth is because there were priests that were on these ships, and they wrote about this, and they couldn't do anything because they might get killed. So they had to keep their mouths shut, and they waited till they got back to Spain to report what Columbus was really doing. Yeah, and so in one of these instances, he said he promised Queen Isabella that that he heard about rivers of gold and that he said the Indians are make really good slaves. So he said that he said this to the Queen. So in his next trip, he was given 17 ships and more than 1,200 men. I think this is his third expedition, but he failed to deliver. Yeah, it says hundreds of native slaves died on the way to Spain. So I thought it was 50, and then I thought it was 150. No, I'm way off. It's hundreds. He took hundreds of Indians as slaves, and they all died on the way back to Spain. And the gold was not plentiful. Yeah, it wasn't really much at all. And so when he came back, he forced the Indians to work in gold mines until they passed out. Yeah, and if you didn't do your work, you were beheaded. Yeah, they cut your head off. And then he made this law saying that everybody who they thought was 14 years old, from then on up, they all had to supply at least each person over 14 years old had to supply at least a thimble of gold dust every 3 months. And they were given copper necklaces as proof of their compliance. The ones that didn't want to do that, or if they didn't, after 3 months and they didn't produce a thimble of gold dust, they had their hands cut off. And the hands were then tied around their necks while they bled to death. Yeah, just imagine that. 3 months go by, and you don't have enough gold dust. Then they cut your hands off and tied them to your neck, and they just threw you in a pit until you bled to death. So about 10,000 Indians died like this. Yeah, they died handless. And then in approximately, all this happens in a matter of 2 years. And during that time, about the estimate, according to these priests, they estimate that about 250,000 Indians on Haiti were dead. And many of these deaths included mass suicides because they didn't want to die in this horrible way. They knew they were going to die because of the atrocious acts that Columbus and his men were doing. So rather than die at the sword, they killed themselves. And sometimes they would kill their kids because they didn't want their kids to become sex slaves. Then they would kill themselves. Yeah? And so, he's was known to have said that gold is the most precious of all commodities. Gold constitutes treasures, and he who possesses it has all he needs in the world, as also the means of rescuing souls from purgatory and restoring them to the enjoyment of paradise. So he's going crazy, yeah. If you have gold, you can do anything, yeah. You can even send somebody to heaven. Yeah, that's what he's saying. And there were, around towards the end of his life, see a lot of these Spanish conquistadors, they had what they call war dogs. And these dogs wore armor too, yeah, and they were raised to kill. And what they would do is they would have hunts for sport, and they used Indians as the what do you call it, the goal, yeah. So they would make an Indian run in the wilderness, and then these dogs would chase this Indian down, and once they catch him, then they would, the dogs would, tear up the Indian guy while he's alive, and eat him up. And then they would also just grab Indian babies from their mothers and feed them to these war dogs right in front of the mother, while this dog is eating this baby. Can you imagine that? Yeah. So, after complaints, because like I said, a lot of the sailors that this sickened them, so they all reported, about his mismanagement of what he was doing over there. So he was arrested in 1500 and brought back to Spain, whatever titles he had. Then he was pardoned by the king, yeah, and who then who paid for a fourth voyage. Isn't that incredible? All these things, yeah, that are happening because of this. This is all horrible. Yet in even Latin American countries, they still celebrate it. These are, descendants of the Spanish settlers, the conquistadors. It says that Hawaii, Alaska, Oregon, and South Dakota are the only states in America that do not recognize Columbus Day at all. Hawaii and South Dakota mark the day with an alternative holiday. Hawaii celebrates Discoverers Day, which commemorates the Polynesian discoverers of Hawaii on the same date. So they're celebrating the Polynesian people that found the islands of Hawaii. Because see, Hawaii, a lot of the islands in the Pacific, these are dead volcanoes, or dormant volcanoes, I should say, because some of them are still emitting lava. Yeah. So they use it to honor the Polynesian people. In South Dakota, it's called Native American Day. Yeah. So, but in Hawaii, they don't. It's not a legal holiday. Okay, it's just a local thing. But in South Dakota, it's an official holiday, and it's called Native American Day. And Oregon does not recognize Columbus Day neither as a holiday nor a commemoration, and schools and public offices remain open. Okay, so they don't even observe it at all. Good for them. Yeah. And others like Iowa and Nevada, they don't celebrate Columbus Day as an official holiday. However, the governor is authorized and requested by the statute to proclaim the day each year. So each year he makes the proclamation, yeah, that it's a holiday. Kind of crazy if you ask me. Um, and some cities they don't recognize it, yeah, like the city of Berkeley, California, has replaced Columbus Day with Indigenous Peoples Day. They've been doing that since 1992, and other towns in California are starting to do that too. Um, let's see here. There's another thing here. I'm seeing Minneapolis, Minnesota, Seattle, Washington. The city of Seattle, Washington, they're calling it Indigenous Day. They're not calling it Columbus Day either. And in Oklahoma, it's the tribes themselves are calling it Native American Day, but the rest of the state is Columbus Day. A lot of these Central America, South American countries changed the name. They call it either the Day of Cultures, or they celebrate all cultures, yeah, or they celebrate indigenous cultures. So, like in Venezuela and Costa Rica, a lot of these other countries, they're changing it too. So America's the last country that needs to fall in line. So it's starting. Yeah, it is starting to change. And I think this is very important. It's very important to learn that what Columbus was not a hero at all. Yeah, that this was a very, 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 very bad man. It's really important that the world knows that Columbus is no hero. And why this Catholic group in America wants this to remain a holiday? Why can they not get it through their heads that Columbus was, if there's anything as a demon, if a demon exists, Christopher Columbus is one of them. Yeah? What he did was horrible. This guy did not do one damn good thing. And like I said, it ended up killing, thousands, hundreds of thousands of Indians died because of this man. He took advantage of them. He used them, for sport. And you have to remember too that during that time, the Catholic Church did not consider Indians as human, that they were animals, so that they could do whatever they wanted to do with them. And even today, there's still a Vatican law, this papal bull, it's called, and it says that if when the church goes to a land, and if that indigenous people refuses to accept God, then the church has every right to take that land from those people, because when a people refuses to learn about God, that people is not human. They're not human. That law is still standing. Indians for over 50 years have been trying to get the Pope to rescind that law. They've approached several popes since then, and so far none of them has rescinded it. Now we have a pope that seems to be doing all kinds of wonderful things. I wonder if he will rescind it. this Pope Francis, I think his name is. I wonder if he will be the one to rescind it, because it's still standing. It's still a law. Yeah, that is severe duality there. If you don't accept our God, then you are not human, and we will take everything from you, including your life. That is extreme duality there. And why is it that the Italians in America, that they want to keep Columbus Day as a holiday? Because he's an Italian hero. He is no hero. But why do they want to keep it? See, they're focusing only on their outer identity. When you communicate in a healthy way, you're communicating from your sacred center. Okay, I mean, when you communicate in a healthy way, you're communicating from within. That's your sacred center, where the four parts of yourself connect. You heard me say that. When you're dualistic, you're communicating from outside there. So you're either going to focus on your skin color, or your culture, or your religion, or whatever ideology you have. That's all coming from outside the sacred center. So when you have these Italians that are fighting, they want this holiday to remain, it's because they're communicating from outside their sacred center. And when you are that way, you are dualistic. And remember what I said earlier, is they don't see the fullness of reality. That they're really thick-headed. And this is a really good example of showing you of how thick-headed they can be. Yeah, so it's slowly happening that, I hope one day they totally abolish that holiday. Just take it away. There doesn't even have to be a holiday. Yeah. So, because if in America there are months, like there's the African American month, and I think there's even a Latin American month, but we only have a day. So I think we deserve a month too. That's why I said just take the holiday away and give us a month too, like the other cultures get to have. That's my opinion. Columbus is no hero. Yeah, this is a murderer. He's not a good guy. Yeah, these facts are written by people who were there. That they couldn't believe how inhumane he was acting, as well as his sailors. One of the priests that was there, he said, he wrote in his journal, he says, even as I write this, I'm trembling. He said, I didn't think humans could get this low. Yeah, that the depravity is just mind blowing. That of the acts that Columbus and his men were doing. So this is horrible. Yeah, this is so horrible. And this is the truth. He went crazy at the end, and that they just left him on one of the islands. He got so crazy that even his own crew basically had enough of him. Let me read something based on logbooks, yeah, from the people who were there, and that. Okay, this is what it says. It says that Columbus, okay, they found no gold fields, but had to fill up the ships, returning to Spain with some kind of dividend. In the year 1495, they went on a great slave raid, rounded up 1,500 Arawak men, women, and children, put them in pens guarded by Spaniards and dogs, then picked 500 best specimens to load onto ships. Of those 500, 200 died on the way. The rest arrived alive in Spain and were put up for sale by the archdeacon of the town, who reported that although the slaves were naked, they weren't embarrassed. Yeah, and Columbus wrote, "Let us, in the name of the Holy Trinity, go on sending all the slaves that can be sold." So they're selling Indians as slaves in the name of God. But too many of the slaves died in captivity, and so Columbus, desperate to pay back dividends to those who invested, had to make good his promise to fill the ships with gold. So back in Haiti, this is what I said earlier. They ordered all people 14 years and older to collect a small quantity of gold dust every 3 months. When they brought this container, this is that symbol, yeah. When they brought it, they were given copper tokens to hang around their necks. Indians, American Indians that were found without the copper token had their hands cut off and tied to their necks, and they bled to death. That's what I said earlier, yeah. So they give you a copper token to hang around your neck. So this shows that you brought in enough gold dust. If you didn't do that, then you didn't get that copper token, and then your hands were cut off. Yeah, see, it's crazy. This is the truth. Yeah, there's nothing good that this man did. Yeah, there is nothing good that this man did. And the National Council of Churches, this is the biggest Christian organization, called on all Christians to not celebrate Columbus Day, because it represents oppression, degradation, and genocide. So there are a lot of people, that are starting to change as they learn the truth to what really, really happened. They're starting to change. So that's good, yeah, and that needs to continue, yeah. More people need to learn the truth of what really happened when Columbus came. That nothing good happened. Yeah, nothing good happened. This was a crazy man. This is not a good man. So, if they're having a day for Columbus is like having a holiday for Hitler. Yeah, and that will never happen. So, Columbus Day should not exist either. Yeah, this is how that goes. So if your state is having Columbus Day, I hope if you're enlightened, I hope you are doing your part in educating others into the truth. You don't have to go out in the streets and protest and stuff unless you want to. That's your choice. But you can also, we have the internet, and we can use the internet for good things too. Yeah, we can use it to spread the truth. To go on forums, to go into Facebook groups and start sending this message around, saying that this guy was no hero. Yeah, this was a bad man, and there should not be a holiday in his name. Yeah, there should not be a holiday in his name. So there shouldn't even be any holiday on this day, really, because when in America, they're having, you have Hispanic month, or is it Latin month, or whatever it's called, and you have African American month. If you're going to have a month for a culture, then you might as well have a month for every culture that's in the country. So you should have one for, the a month for Indian people, and also a month for the Indian people as well. Everybody should get a month, and if the country is not willing to do that, then they shouldn't do it for anybody. So the Latin Americans, they shouldn't have theirs. The African Americans, they shouldn't have theirs either if others can't have it. Do you see what I mean? You gotta treat everybody the same. So, or either that, just give everybody a day, yeah, like this Indigenous Day. Then black people should just have a day too, and Mexicans should just have a day too, instead of a whole month. Do you see what I mean? You got to make it fair to everybody, is what I'm saying. So, anyway, that's how that goes. Yeah. Now in South Dakota, there was a governor by the name of Governor George S. Mickelson, and for those of you in Europe, a governor is like a president of the state that he is representing, yeah, but they call it governor. And South Dakota is a racist state. The two main cultures are American Indians and white people. And historically, Indians have been tricked in treaties into losing land, in which that land was then given to immigrants to farm, and those immigrants were very racist. Yeah, even though the land came from Indians, they still hated Indians, and so that mentality is always there. They pass it down from parents to children, parents to children, parents to children. It keeps passing down that Indians are no good people. So a lot of households, that's what children hear. They hear their parents talking about, like say some Indian killed somebody, and then that's on the news, and they, I don't know about those Indians. That's all they do is get drunk and kill each other. And only good Indian is a dead Indian. And little kids hear that. They love their moms and dads, and they start thinking like them. They adopt the same opinions. And it's very rare that a child will say, you know what, Mom, Dad, I disagree with you. But the same thing is happening on the Indian side too. And they hear their parents talking about, God damn, and white people are that's just the way they are. No good. They're just mean. See, the same thing is happening on both sides. And that's not good. Because this is all focusing away from the sacred center, and that's not good. Yeah, that's only going to lead to more trouble. There's exceptions. Yeah, there are exceptions where, people do take the time to know each other, but that's rare. In South Dakota, that's really, really rare. But that means generally, most people are racist in South Dakota. So this governor, he had this idea of having a year of reconciliation, yeah, and he wanted to proclaim, 1990. Oh, he talked about it with this. There's a guy from Pine Ridge, a Lakota guy from Pine Ridge, that he had a newspaper called the Lakota Times, and he is a very smart man, and he didn't want the tribe's involvement whatsoever, because the tribal councils are incredibly corrupt, and they tried to shut down his newspaper, so he set up his newspaper off the reservation, so the tribe couldn't touch him, and he never used tribal monies to run his newspapers because if he knows that if he did that, the council will try to take it over. Yeah, they'll try to make that newspaper their own weapon against their own people. He knew that, so he stayed independent of the tribe, and he reported the truth about the illegal activities of the tribal council, and that really made him stand out. And he got death threats. Tribal council members were hiring people to burn down his business, things like that. And see, that goes to show you how corrupt the tribal council is. So, but he survived, yeah, and he really made a name for himself for telling the truth, and he got known nationwide. And Governor Mickelson befriended him, and these two guys became friends. Yeah, Governor Mickelson would invite him to come visit him, yeah, and have talks, and it was through these talks that Governor Mickelson said, "Yeah, I'd like to." He said, "I know that 1990 is the 100th year anniversary of the Wounded Knee Massacre," and he said, "I'd like to do something about that." He said, "I'd like to do something that's in the opposite direction." He said, "I'd like to proclaim 1990 as the year of reconciliation for Indians and white people, that we do activities to get to know one another." And Tim Gallego was his name, yeah, the guy from Pine Ridge, the guy who had this newspaper called Lakota Times. Tim Gallego said, "You know what? That's a really nice idea, but Indians really mistrust white people for historical reasons. The treaties were broken. The United States refuses to honor them, and Indians were tricked from the United States. I mean, they were tricked by the United States into losing all this land, and then this land was given to immigrants, and then the immigrants turn around and start oppressing Indians. They oppress the people that gave them this land, basically. So it's a big injustice. And so ever since that happened, Indians really have a huge mistrust, and I think you can understand why. So you're going to have to do something a little bit extra to get Indians to believe that you really mean what you say. So Governor Mickelson said, "Well, what ideas do you have?" So Tim Gallego said, "Why don't you change Columbus Day? Why don't you get rid of that holiday and call it Native American Day? Because Christopher Columbus, as we know, is not a hero. He brought genocide, and hundreds of thousands of Indians died in 2 years at the swords of 1,200 soldiers, 1,200 Spanish soldiers. Over 200,000 Indians died because of that. And he didn't do anything good. So for South Dakota to continue to celebrate Columbus Day, it's just celebrating a racist. So to really say to the Indian people that you mean business concerning reconciliating the two peoples, the two cultures, I think if you Columbus Day, that'll show the Indian people that you are serious and that you mean business, and they're more likely to believe you. So Governor Mickelson said, "Yeah, you're right. Let's do it." So he got his argument together, went before the state legislature of South Dakota, and, with Tim Gallego at his side. They addressed the legislature and said, "This is the reason why we should not have Columbus Day. That we should let's celebrate. Yeah, this one day. Let's call it Native American Day, and let's try to begin talking to one another slowly. With a goal to reconciliate the two peoples, because we are here. We should try to make the best of it." And the legislature voted for it, and they were in favor of it too. So, and they did that in 1989. So they changed it to Native American Day in 1989. Then in 1990, he proclaimed that year the year of reconciliation. Then Indians celebrated that, and they believed him that he meant business, that he was serious about trying to reconcile the two cultures. Beautiful story. And what's really funny, I think, is that Governor Mickelson is a Republican, and Republicans are known racists everywhere in America. But yet, yeah, I thought he was a Democrat, because if he was a Democrat, that would be totally in line. Yeah, that would totally be believable. But when I read that he's a Republican, I had to do a double take. Yeah, I had to read it again. I thought I made a mistake, and no, he was a Republican. He was a Republican, and it worked. Yeah, it really worked. So it still happens. Yeah, it's still Native American in South Dakota. But why do these Italian groups want to keep it? Why do they want to honor a murderer? Yeah. Why do they want to? Why do they want to honor a demon? Why? Like attracts like. Think about that. That's a Lakota Star Knowledge belief. Like attracts like. I think that argument should say it all for you. Yeah? So, from that time, next comes, the British set up their colonies in North America, the 13 colonies. They go to Africa, get black slaves, black people, make them into slaves, bring them to America, treat them like animals. This is the legacy of Christopher Columbus. Nothing good. Yeah? So, I just let you think about that. Yeah? And I'm really thankful that in South Dakota they don't celebrate it. Yeah? That it's called Native American Day instead.